opening, followed by someone sitting on my bed. I felt my leg grazed and the bed sink under a person's weight. It's just my mom, I thought. I opened my eyes. It was not my mom at all. I felt an eyeless boy. He had black empty sockets, about my age, sitting at the foot of my bed. He extended his hand and it was as little as a box. I was startled but reached out. He pulled back. I reached again and said, "Give it." Then I blinked, and when I reopened my eyes, he was gone. But I could still see the imprint where he'd sat on my bed. Fast forward 5 years and my girlfriend came over to do some homework. After she finished, she took a nap and waited for her parents to come and pick her up. When they arrived, I tried waking her up and she opened her eyes suddenly, looking up at the corner where the wall met the ceiling. She pointed there and went back to sleep. I shook her again. She came to full consciousness, and I explained what she'd done. She looked haunted. Up on the wall, I saw a little boy with no eyes. He was there, in a Spider-Man pose, staring at me. I freaked out and told her my story about the same kid, what happened to me when I was 10. Fast forward another 5 years, and I'm 20 and still with the same girl. We also had a little 2-year-old. We were living in my parents' house, in my old room. My daughter started waking up at the same time every night, and she'd talk. After a while, I noticed she had almost the same conversation every night. I playfully asked her once who she was talking to. She said, "It's a little boy. He's nice. He's lost and looking for his mommy." My daughter's nightly conversations continued until we got our own place later that year. I still don't know what was up with ever seeing that little boy with no eyes. But me and my girlfriend swear to this day that we're not crazy. A few years ago, I moved into a 1-bedroom apartment in Melbourne, Australia. It was my first time living on my own. The apartment block had been built in the 1930s, so you could call it somewhat old. I'd been there for a few months when I came home from work one day and went into the bathroom. I saw something strange. A wooden board, which had covered a hole in the ceiling that led to a small attic space. It laid fractured in 2 pieces on the ground. I examined the pieces. The board was an inch thick, and it would have taken Bruce Lee to break it. I thought the landlord had sent someone to work on the attic. I was frozen stiff with fear. Someone is up there for sure, I thought. I emailed pictures to the landlord, asking if anyone had been there. Her reply read, "Please call me as soon as you're able to." I called, and she explained that her last 2 tenants had said the same thing. She promised to replace the board, and she did. A month later, I woke up one night around 4 a.m. My body was covered in goosebumps. It felt like someone was rubbing their hands all over me. Everything was silent. But then I heard a dragging sound coming from above my head. It was as if someone was pulling a sack of potatoes. I froze with fear, convinced someone was up there. There was no way an animal could make that sound. After 5 minutes, I worked up the courage to turn on the light, armed myself with a cricket bat, and walked into the bathroom. That's when I saw that new board covering the hole was broken in 2. I felt sick to my stomach. The dragging sound had stopped, but I heard something else. Whispering. The sound was clear and coming from the attic. It sounded like children, and I could hear one sentence repeat over and over.
It's your turn. It's your turn.
I switched on every light in the apartment to make everything feel normal. It was 5 a.m. and dark outside. I watched TV to try and unwind. Then a fuse blew. My pet Dexter, whom I kept in the kitchen, usually never made a sound at night. But he started squawking, like he was being strangled. I never heard him make any type of noise, like the noise he was making. He was screaming. I grabbed my car keys, ran out, sat in my car, and waited there until the sun came up. When I saw people walking their dogs, this comforted me enough to go back in. The front door was open, but I figured I might have forgotten to close it when I ran out. I went to the kitchen to check on Dexter, but he wasn't in his cage. I felt sick to my stomach again. All of my windows were closed, so I looked everywhere inside. When I walked into the bathroom, I heard splashing. Dexter was drowning in the toilet. I took him out, washed him, and dried him up. I was so confused, as in what the hell happened to him. At 8 a.m., I called the landlord and gave her a watered-down version of the night.
"Oh, wow. You heard the whispering too?"
She said. I stayed in the apartment for another 18 months. I heard the whispering on a few occasions, and twice the board covering the hole in the ceiling had moved. Although I lived somewhere now, the landlord recently called. She said that her new tenants had begged to speak with me about some of the stuff that's been going on there too. Forget it. That's not my problem now. I still try to figure out what the hell was going on. The ambulance company that I used to work for had a haunted ambulance truck. We used to call it Rig 12. A lot of EMTs had stories about it, but I never put much thought into the paranormal, really. That is, until I had my own experience with Rig 12. My partner and I was working in a rural community at 3 a.m., and it was pitch dark and completely quiet. We were both dozing, and I was in the driver's seat and she was in the passenger's. I woke up to a muffled voice, but I thought my partner was talking, so I told her I was trying to sleep and closed my eyes. I distantly heard a male's voice.
"Oh my God, am I dying?"
My partner and I sat up straight and looked back into the patient's compartment, where it sounded like the voice was coming from. Then things were quiet for a couple of seconds. Then we heard the click of an oxygen bottle. It started hissing, as if it was leaking. I turned on the lights and we ran out of the rig. I thought someone might have climbed into it while we were sleeping, so we opened the rear doors. No one was there. I checked both the oxygen bottles. Neither of them was opened. We didn't sleep much that night, but we both still talk about it to this day.